He growled through the wall again, and no, not metaphorically. Actual, primal, spine-tingling alpha growling. At 2:14 a.m. I checked. The sound rumbled through the plaster like thunder bottled in a rib cage. It wasn't loud exactly, but deep, felt more than heard. I sat upright in bed, blinking into the dark like it owed me an explanation. That's the third night this week. Either he's got night terrors or a very aggressive furniture-moving hobby. I slid off the bed, feet landing silently on the warm wood floor, and padded into my kitchen. It was quiet, lit only by the dim blue of the fish tank and the red eye of my electric kettle. I turned it on anyway. Tea wouldn't help me sleep, but at least it gave my hands something to do. My apartment is small, but mine. White walls, clean counters, rows of books about animals and anatomy, and exactly 0 things that smell like me. The scent suppressants humming behind the wall panels saw to that. Being scentless was the only way to stay hidden, the only way to stay safe. A new neighbor moving in was supposed to be uneventful. A shrug, a distant nod in the hallway, maybe a passive-aggressive note about trash bins. But that was before he showed up, tall, broad, sharp-edged like someone carved from stone using only a scowl. His scent, what little slipped past the wall, was restrained but not absent, like a wolf that knew how to cage itself but left the door open just in case. Alpha. I knew it the second he stepped into the building, and I felt it again now, in the way his presence scratched at my skin from the other side of the drywall. I was supposed to be used to this. I'd built my entire life around passing, around being the boring, harmless, maybe a little snarky human vet on the edge of town. I had a routine, a lockbox for my instincts, rules, no eye contact with alphas, no lingering touches, no raising your voice, and never, never let them scent you. But he's making it hard, not just because he growls in his sleep, but because he looks at me like he's listening with more than just his ears. And alphas who listen are always the most dangerous. Still, he hadn't said more than 5 words to me since he moved in. Sorry. That your spot? The day he blocked my parking space with his giant black SUV, no problem, I'd lied. I'd smiled, neutral, not submissive, not challenging. He'd nodded, no smile. Then he'd stared just a second too long. The kettle clicked off, steam hissing. I poured the water into my chipped mug, watching the tea leaves swirl and settle like storm clouds. I'd worked too hard for this life. For silence, for stability. I wasn't going to let one scowling ex-military alpha throw that off. I opened my laptop and pulled up his name from the lease board. Callen Vale, age 33, occupation, private security contractor, former elite enforcement unit, Central Pack. Lovely. He probably had more kill marks than I had houseplants, but none of that mattered, because he thought I was human, and I was going to keep it that way, even if it killed me. There are 100 ways to say move your truck. I chose the one with profanity. Mentally. I stood at the edge of the parking lot, arms crossed, staring at the massive matte black beast of a vehicle that was currently blocking my spot. Again. It wasn't just a truck. It was a declaration. The kind of machine a man buys when he needs everyone within a 2-mile radius to know he has dominance issues and possibly a collection of knives. Which, judging by the neighbor, wouldn't surprise me. I glanced at my watch. 7 minutes until my first patient. A chihuahua with an attitude and a bladder problem. This was not how I wanted to start my day. I marched across the lot, jaw tight, every step fueled by the kind of righteous civilian rage only a blocked parking space can summon. Callen was crouched by the back wheel, tying something to the undercarriage. Something military-looking and complicated, which I made a note to absolutely not think about too hard. He looked up as I approached. Steel gray eyes met mine. Steady, cool, not unfriendly, but assessing. "Morning," he said, voice low even. He stood slowly, intentionally, all 6 foot something of him rising like a glacier, solid and unhurried. His t-shirt clung to his frame in ways that probably weren't legal in 3 states. Scars, white, healed over lines, peeked from beneath his sleeves and collar. He had the face of someone who forgot how to smile sometime in 2017 and didn't miss it. I blinked, lips pressed into a tight line, You're in my spot. He glanced at the lines on the asphalt. Didn't see a name on it. That's because civilized people don't need names. They have common sense. He raised an eyebrow, unfazed. I'll move it. I waited. He didn't move. Now would be great, I added, pointing at my car idling behind me. Unless your plan is to establish a forward base in slot B2, a flicker of something crossed his expression. Not irritation. Amusement? He gave me a small, curt nod, then turned and climbed into the truck like it was a military transport. The engine roared to life. As he backed out, slowly like I wasn't standing there internally combusting, I caught myself inhaling. Mistake. His scent, what little escaped suppression, was all spice and smoke and something dangerously wolf. It brushed against the edge of my instincts like a match near dry leaves. My spine stiffened. No, no. I yanked the suppressed instinct down hard, like slamming a steel door. No reactions, no scent back, just breath in, breath out. The truck pulled out cleanly, giving me access. I parked quickly, hands tight on the wheel until the engine shut off. When I stepped out, Callen was already walking away toward the building. He didn't look back. I almost appreciated that. Almost. Instead, I locked my car and followed at a distance, trying not to notice how his shoulders moved under his shirt, or how his posture was too upright for someone just casually going up the stairs. Military, definitely military. Dangerous? Also definitely. But not in the way people feared fists or knives. Alphas like him were dangerous because they didn't need to lift a finger to unravel someone like me. All it took was one wrong glance, one slip of scent, one heartbeat out of sync, and he'd know. He'd know what I was. I pressed the elevator button with more force than necessary. When the doors slid open, I stepped inside and willed myself to forget how my pulse still hadn't slowed. He thought I was human, and I had every intention of keeping it that way. Mrs. Bell has a hearing aid and the hearing range of a bat. She also has 24 potted plants, an entire wardrobe of pastel cardigans, and a direct line to every whispered secret within a 10-mile radius. I saw him leave at 4:30 this morning, she said, tapping her spoon against her coffee cup like it was punctuation. Didn't even use the front door, just disappeared into the dark. I stirred my tea, pretending not to care. We sat at the little corner cafe across from my clinic, where the windows were always foggy and the muffins always tasted vaguely like regret. The place was half empty, save for a pair of high schoolers sharing earbuds and a tired-looking server with chipped pink nails. Mrs. Bell leaned in, her perfume a thick cloud of lavender and menthol. He's not just a regular alpha, dear. Not that any alpha's really regular, of course. But that one? He came back wrong. I blinked. Wrong? She glanced out the window, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. His records were sealed. All of them. My nephew works for housing registration. Don't ask how, he barely works at all. And even he couldn't pull his full-service file. I tried to keep my expression neutral. Maybe he just values privacy. Or maybe something happened. Her eyes sparkled with glee. Something bad. I forced a smile. Well, I doubt he's hiding a body in his closet. Mrs. Bell didn't laugh. People don't come back from enforcement and choose this building. Something chased him here. Or he's chasing something. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. My fingers tightened around the ceramic mug. What if she was right? I glanced across the street. Through the tinted glass of my clinic, I could see my reflection. Buttoned coat, tea in hand, carefully bland expression. Harmless, invisible. That's what I'd built. And it had worked. Until he arrived. Mrs. Bell thankfully turned her attention to her crossword. I used the excuse to duck out early. Emergency kitten. Very vomity. She nodded approvingly and waved me off like a soldier heading to war. Back in the clinic, I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, kicked off my boots and hung up my coat. Then I saw it. A folded square of paper on the front desk, plain white, no envelope, no name. I picked it up, heart already racing. The handwriting was neat, precise, ink slightly smudged. You've been hiding a long time, we remember. My breath caught. No name, no threat, just certainty. I sat down on the exam table, pulse thudding in my throat. For a long time, I just stared at the paper, as if looking long enough would make it disappear. How? My scent suppressants were industrial grade. My records were buried. My name had been changed. No one was supposed to know who I really was. I crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. Then I locked every door, closed the blinds, and checked the suppressant system. Everything was working. So why did I still feel exposed? Out the window, across the street, Callen stood on his balcony, arms crossed, gaze unreadable, watching. He held the snarling mutt like it was a kitten. I held my breath like it was a bomb. The dog had half a torn ear, one blood-crusted eye, and absolutely zero interest in being helped. It was a blur of growls, teeth, and rage wrapped in fur. And Callen Vale had it tucked under one arm like it was a rolled-up blanket. "I think he's just misunderstood," Callen said dryly as he stepped into my clinic. I blinked. "Misunderstood? That thing's trying to eat your ribs." The dog lunged again, more noise than force, but Callen didn't flinch. He was calm, annoyingly calm, like this was normal for a Thursday morning. He looked around. "Where do you want him?" "Exam table, and put on gloves before he gives you tetanus." He obeyed, gently laying the dog down with surprising care. I noticed the blood on his forearm already drying in streaks. Of course he didn't mention it. I pulled on gloves and a face shield and stepped into the danger zone. The dog growled low but didn't bite. His energy had shifted the second I got close. He could tell I wasn't scared. He didn't know why, but he felt it. Animals always knew something was different about me. Not what, exactly, but enough to hesitate. "He was in the alley behind your building," Callen said. "Didn't run from me. Thought maybe something was wrong." "Other than the attitude problem?" He huffed a laugh. "Yeah." I began examining the dog, murmuring soft reassurance as I worked. A broken leg, shallow puncture wounds, old bruises. Someone had trained this animal to fight and then dumped him when he lost. "People are trash," I muttered. Callen didn't disagree. The front door chimed, and a voice cut through the air like a knife dipped in sarcasm. "You let him near scalp-level teeth without a helmet? That's optimism I didn't expect from you." I turned. A man in a sleek wheelchair rolled smoothly into the room. Early 30s, sharp jawline, wicked grin. His eyes flicked over me like I was part of the furniture. He wore a tactical hoodie and fingerless gloves, and looked like he'd been born to cause trouble. "Jace," Callen said, a warning in his tone. Jace ignored it. So this is the mysterious neighbor vet who apparently knows how to terrify grown alphas with just a stare. "Hi, Maddy," I said coolly, not offering my hand. "Charming," he said, amused. "She bites?" "She might," Callen said, still watching me. "Oh, don't let me interrupt." Jace rolled closer, peering at the dog. "You know it's wildly unfair when a woman this pretty can also do field surgery without sweating." I arched a brow. "You're bleeding sarcasm. Might want to get that checked." Jace laughed. "Oh, I like her. She's mean." Callen stayed quiet, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. I could feel the tension rolling off him like heat from a furnace. Jace grinned at him. "She's not yours, right?" Callen didn't answer fast enough. "Because she's already barking." I stood straight. "I'm not anyone's." That shut both of them up. Jace blinked. "Okay, noted." I turned back to the dog, focusing on the wound. "You want to flirt, go to a bar. This is a clinic." Silence settled like dust. Finally, Callen spoke, voice lower than before. "You need help with the leg?" I nodded just once. He stepped in beside me. And for the next 20 minutes, we worked in sync. No jokes, no flirting, just hands, instincts, breath. By the time the dog was sedated and splinted, something had shifted. I didn't know what, exactly, but it hummed under my skin. Callen's hand brushed mine when we moved the dog to the kennel. Our eyes met, and something in his gaze said, "You're not what you pretend to be." I looked away first. People don't just vanish, not unless someone wants them to. Her name was Lyra. 22. Registered Omega. Worked part-time at the florist's 2 streets down. Quiet, polite, forgettable in that way Omegas are trained to be. And now, gone. The police report said voluntary absence. Her apartment showed no signs of forced entry. No blood, no witnesses, just empty, too empty. I stared at the printed copy I'd pulled from a friend's inbox. It was scrubbed, sanitized, mechanical, a ghost of a report. Every line written like someone wanted it unimportant. Voluntary disappearance, my ass. No one voluntarily leaves their favorite mug on the stove and their ID on the counter. No Omega walks out into the night without telling someone. Unless they're running, or being taken. I tossed the report aside and rubbed the back of my neck, heart ticking louder than it should. Something was wrong. But no one was saying it. No one ever says it when it's an Omega. I left the clinic early, locking the doors and walking toward the community center 2 blocks away. I needed air. I needed movement. I stopped. Across the street, near the alley behind the post office, stood Callen. He was talking to another man. Tall, clean-shaven, sharp in a way that screamed pack structure. His clothes were too polished for this part of town. His stance was too stiff. An alpha, not a neighbor. The two spoke quietly, tension humming in the space between them. Callen's shoulders were locked, arms folded. The other man gestured, sharp and clipped. I stepped behind a parked car, keeping my eyes just above the edge of the window. They weren't arguing exactly, but they weren't friendly either. After a moment, the man handed Callen a small envelope. Callen looked at it, didn't open it, just tucked it into his back pocket. Then he turned away. The man left without another word, and I just stood there, pulse thudding. What the hell was that? I moved fast, ducking down the side street and circling back to the apartment from the rear. My mind was already spinning. Was Callen part of this? Was he here to watch, to hunt? Had I been so focused on hiding my identity that I missed something worse? That night, I sat on my couch with the lights off and the blinds down, staring at the note I'd found yesterday. You've been hiding a long time. We remember. I'd thought it was a threat. Maybe it still was. But maybe it was also a warning. Because someone was watching. And the question wasn't just why. It was, why me? Tell me what you're hiding, he said. And I almost did. I was halfway up the stairs, clinic keys in one hand, when I heard the door behind me click open. I knew the sound too well now. Heavy metal hinges. No creak. Precise like everything about him. Callen's voice followed. Low, steady, not quite a question. You're not what you seem. I didn't turn. Not right away. Instead, I clenched the railing, trying to steady my breath. What makes you say that? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Light. Harmless. He stepped closer. I felt the shift in the air like a storm moving in behind me. You flinch at things you shouldn't. You notice too much. You don't smell like anything. That last line almost undid me. I finally turned, one step above him, trying not to feel how tall he was. How solid. How close. Are you sniffing me now? His mouth didn't move, but his eyes darkened. I don't need to... The space between us buzzed, tense, tight. Every instinct I'd trained myself to bury was clawing at the surface. Keep your breathing steady. Don't lean back. Don't lean in. You don't want to know what I am, I said quietly. He tilted his head, gaze locked on mine. I already know what you're not. I laughed, a little too sharp. Let me guess. A threat? He didn't smile. A civilian. The word landed harder than I expected. He saw through me, not to the truth, but close enough to burn. You're not my concern, he added. But I'm not your concern at all, I snapped. Silence. The kind that wraps around your throat. I tried to step past him. He moved, not blocking, but shifting, not away. And that's when it hit me. My suppressant was weakening. A flicker of sense slipped out, faint but undeniable. Honey and ozone. Panic and something older. His nostrils flared. Mine nearly did too. The air snapped between us like wire pulled too tight. And for a second, just 1 second, his pupils dilated. Recognition. Reaction. I staggered back like I'd been slapped. I'm fine, I said, voice too high. Maddy, I said I'm fine. I pushed past him, boots thudding hard on the stairs, fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I made it into my apartment, slammed the door, locked it with shaking hands. Then I collapsed against it, heart thundering, lungs refusing to work properly. He didn't say the word. He didn't name it. But he knew, or at least, he suspected. And that was worse. Because now I wasn't just hiding from the world. I was hiding from him. And he wasn't looking away anymore. Bright red letters. Traitor Omega. A message. A promise. A warning. They were sprayed across the glass front of my clinic, jagged and dripping, like blood that hadn't finished drying. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the keys to the front door limp in my hand. The morning sun hadn't even cleared the buildings, but it was already too bright, too loud. Everything in me recoiled. Mind, memory, scent, someone knew. And they wanted me to know they knew. My hands trembled. My mouth was dry. I didn't hear him approach until his shadow fell over mine. Callen stopped beside me, saying nothing. For once, he didn't ask questions. He didn't move. Just stood there, still, solid, a quiet wall of heat and breath. Then, slowly, he walked to the side of the building and pulled out a bucket and rag from the maintenance closet, like he already knew where everything was, like he'd been here before. He dipped the rag into water, wrung it out with calm, efficient movements, and walked back toward the red words. He wiped the first letter. One stroke. The paint smeared like a wound. Still, he kept wiping. I watched, frozen, until I finally moved. Wordless, I stepped forward, took a second rag from the bucket and started scrubbing. Together, in silence, we erased the accusation. It didn't go easily. The red bled through, clinging to the glass. But inch by inch, it faded. When we reached the last letter, I dropped the cloth, breathing hard. He didn't look at me when he spoke. They shouldn't have touched your place. His voice was different now, not cold, not passive, protective. This is my territory, he added. I blinked. Since when? Since you started watching your back every time you stepped outside. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something sharp, something that would keep the space between us clear and safe. But the words didn't come. Instead, I stared at the clean glass, faint traces of red still ghosting the surface. Callen turned toward me, finally meeting my eyes. You didn't deserve that. I don't deserve a lot of things, I murmured. He frowned like he wanted to argue, but didn't. I stepped back, arms crossing tightly. Why are you helping me? Because someone has to. That's not an answer. He shrugged, wiping paint from his knuckles. No, it's not. There it was again, that quiet calm, the refusal to push. The restraint. Most alphas demand. He offered. And for the first time, I saw something different in him. Not just a soldier, not just a threat, but maybe a shield. I didn't trust him, not yet. But in that moment, standing in the morning sun, my clinic reclaimed and red letters fading, I didn't feel alone. You're not broken, he said. You're the first real thing I've seen in years. I didn't mean to snap. I didn't mean to scream at him in the middle of my clinic's back room, where the lights buzzed too loud and the air smelled like antiseptic and buried truths. But something inside me cracked, and the pieces finally spilled out. You don't know anything about me, I shouted, fists clenched at my sides. You think I'm some mystery you can decode with enough time and silence and military brooding? I'm not a puzzle, Callen. I'm a ghost. I don't exist. That's the only way I survive. He didn't move. Just stood there, arms loose at his sides, eyes locked on mine. Steady, calm. Like I was a storm and he'd learned to stand in the rain, and maybe that made it worse. Because I wanted him to yell back, to call me paranoid, dramatic, to say I was imagining the threats carved in red on my glass. But he didn't. He just listened. I didn't run because I was scared, I said, voice quieter now. I ran because they decided what I was before I ever had a choice. Omega, that meant one thing to them, something soft, silent, breedable, owned. I spat the word like it burned. My first heat, they locked me in a room. 1 alpha, 4 betas as guards, no questions, no voice, no say. My throat tightened. I broke the window, climbed out barefoot, got halfway across the field before they realized I was gone. Callen's jaw tensed. I had glass in my feet for 2 days, I added. I kept walking. The silence that followed was thick and bitter, like smoke that didn't quite clear. Then Callen stepped forward, slow. no sudden movements. He didn't touch me, not at first. I didn't come back by choice, he said softly. They sent me on a mission that didn't make sense. Civilian targets, rogue omegas, no threat, just non-compliance. I blinked. His eyes were far away now, voice edged with something old and jagged. I said no. They said I was compromised. I called it being human. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. You got out, I whispered. I got shot, he corrected. My unit left me behind. Took me 3 days to crawl back to the border. Why come here? He met my gaze again. Because the system's still hunting people like you. And I wanted to see if there was something left worth protecting. We stood there in the stillness, breathing each other's pain. And for once it didn't feel like a threat, it felt like recognition. He reached out slowly, fingers brushing my shoulder, just a touch, not possessive, not claiming, just present. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away. His hands stayed there, warm and steady, like an anchor in a current I didn't realize I'd been swimming against for years. You're not broken, he said again, softer now. You're the first real thing I've seen in years. I didn't have words for that, but I didn't need them, because for the first time in a long time, I believed him. They took her, a kid, barely 15, an omega, like I used to be. Her name was Ren. Thin as a reed, too quiet for her age, always chewing her sleeves. She started hanging around the clinic a few weeks ago, offering to clean cages for pocket change. I let her stay longer each time. She never said the word, but I knew. She was one of us. Unclaimed, undocumented, unsafe, and now gone. Her backpack was found in the alley behind the diner. Torn, damp, empty, no sign of a struggle because predators don't leave marks when they move quietly. The police said she probably ran away. I knew better. I stood in the break room of my clinic, shaking. The air was thick and hot and wrong. The suppressant panel on the wall blinked red. Low levels, no. No, no, no. I stumbled toward the emergency supply drawer, palms sweaty, vision tunneling. My scent, normally masked, flattened, erased, was beginning to leak through. I could feel it rising like a fever beneath my skin. Rage, terror, grief. I slammed the drawer open, empty. Damn it! I shouted, slamming it shut again. I barely heard the door swing open behind me. Maddy? Callen's voice. Close. Too close. Don't, I warned, eyes squeezed shut. Stay back. He didn't listen. I felt him move toward me, the space between us compressing, like gravity had changed its rules. I turned away, pressing my back to the counter. It's not safe. I know, he said softly. I can smell it. The last word broke something loose in me. I let out a ragged breath. The air was heavy with scent now. Mine, raw, real. Years of suppression, shame, and hiding collapsing in one dizzying moment. My hands clenched the edge of the counter. He should have stepped back. But he didn't. Instead, he reached out and gently touched my face, his fingers cool against my overheated cheek. I'm here, he said. I'm with you. I opened my eyes. His were soft, steady, not afraid, not even surprised. I felt your fear, he continued, your silence. I've seen how carefully you breathe around others, how you shrink when you're angry, instead of expanding. My throat closed. You don't have to hide anymore. Not from me. My instincts screamed that this was a mistake, that he'd mark me, cage me, use this moment to own me. But he didn't move closer. He just stayed. Present. Steady. Silent. I let her stay in the storage room some nights, I whispered. Ren, I should have made her go. Told her to keep moving. No, he said. You gave her a safe place. You gave her hope. And someone stole that. I nodded, barely holding it together. I'm going to help you find her, he said. And when we do... When, I echoed. Because I had to believe she was still alive. I had to. And in that moment, with my scent raw in the air and my mask completely shattered, I wasn't alone. We found them. And they expected us to beg. We made them bleed instead. It wasn't a building, it was a shell. A half-abandoned factory on the edge of the industrial district. The kind of place no one questioned because no one cared. Broken windows, boarded entrances. that smell of rust and mold that always clung to forgotten things. And inside, omegas, taken, trapped, sold. I crouched in the shadow of a loading dock, fingers gripping the cold edge of concrete. Callen stood beside me, headset tucked into his ear, jaw tight. His eyes scanned the perimeter with practiced precision. Behind us, a van idled silently with Jace inside, monitoring signals, sweeping comms, ready to drop distractions like breadcrumbs. "You ready?" Callen asked. "No," I said, "but we're going anyway." He gave a nod. "Just how I like it." The front door was a decoy. We slipped in through the side, through a rusted maintenance panel Jace had unlocked remotely. Inside, the air was damp and sour. Metal catwalks loomed above, flickering lights stuttered overhead. I counted 5 men, 2 by the stairs, 1 near a row of crates, 2 in a makeshift office that pulsed with a red desk lamp. Callen took the lead, smooth, silent, a shadow in combat boots. He dropped the first one without a sound, chokehold, clean. The second caught a flash of movement, reached for a weapon, and got a knee to the ribs instead. By the time the third shouted, "What the hell?" Callen was already behind him. I moved fast, ducking into a side corridor where the scent hit me like a wall. Omegas, young, unmarked, terrified. I found the room, locked with a keypad. Jace's voice crackled in my ear. "Give me 10 seconds. 9, 8, the door opened. 6 girls huddled inside, blankets, thin mats, empty bowls. No sound, just wide, glassy eyes. Ren was curled in the corner, hands wrapped around her knees. "Ren," I breathed. She flinched. I dropped to my knees, keeping my voice low, steady. "It's me, Maddy. You're safe now, I promise." She stared at me like I was a dream she didn't dare believe in. "They said you were gone," she whispered. "Never," I said. "Not leaving you. Not ever." I reached out, not grabbing, not demanding, just offering. Slowly, but she moved. And when her fingers touched mine, I felt it. The shift. Hope. Behind me, Callen's voice rang out, clear. I turned just as the last guard stumbled back, dazed but breathing. Didn't need to. He just stood there, blood on his knuckles, chest heaving. They looked at him like he was death incarnate. He looked back like he chose not to be. Because we weren't like them. We weren't hunters. But we would protect what was ours. I helped the girls to their feet. Ren clung to my side. One of the others started crying, and I pulled her close. "You're going home," I told them. "Not the place you came from. Somewhere better." Callen met my eyes, and in that moment, without words, we agreed. We weren't returning them to the old system. We were building something new. This isn't about running. It's about building something better. The girls sat in the clinic's recovery room, wrapped in clean blankets and quiet disbelief. The youngest had fallen asleep on a pile of towels. Another was gently combing Ren's hair with fingers that still trembled. None of them wanted to go home. Not to their old homes, anyway. Some had packs. Most didn't. But all of them knew what awaited them in the system. Ownership, silence, control. A label slapped on their backs like a price tag. "They'll find us," one girl whispered. "They always do." "No," I said firmly. "Not this time." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, the knot in my chest loosening for the first time in what felt like years. My clinic wasn't a shelter. It wasn't built to house runaways. But maybe it could be more than what it was. A haven, neutral ground, not a pack, not a cage. A choice. The words formed before I even realized I meant them. We'll make something new, a place that doesn't belong to anyone but ourselves. Behind me, Callen leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching me with something unreadable in his eyes. "You're serious," he said. I turned. Dead serious. He pushed off the wall, stepping forward. "You realize what that means, right? You'll be marked, hunted. They'll call it rebellion." "Let them," I said. "We'll call it survival." A beat passed. His gaze didn't waver. Then, to my surprise, he smiled. "I've served under a lot of leaders," he said. "But you're the only one I've ever wanted to follow." My heart stuttered. "I'm not an alpha," I said, almost laughing. He shrugged. "Neither am I. But if you ask me, alpha never meant strength. It meant control. And control isn't the same as courage. He stepped closer, voice low. You're my alpha, Maddy. Whether you like the title or not. I didn't answer, not with words. But I didn't look away either. There was something deeply ironic in it. I'd spent my life being told to kneel, to submit, to serve, and now he was choosing to stand behind me. The girls watched us from inside the room, their eyes filled with quiet questions and fragile hope. I turned back to them. No one will force you, I said. If you want to leave, I'll help you. If you want to stay, then we protect each other. One by one, they nodded. Soft, slow, not out of fear, out of choice. There are no ranks here, just names, just people, just safety. The clinic smells like tea, antiseptic, and fresh paint. The graffiti's long gone, replaced by new signage, New Run Community Center. Letters hand-cut by Ren, crooked but proud. Below it, a symbol, 3 overlapping circles. No crest, no claim. We didn't want to build a new pack. We built a new choice. In the mornings, I lead workshops. How to recognize manipulation, how to say no, how to breathe through panic. Some girls just sit in the corner and sip hot chocolate, and that counts as progress. In the afternoons, Callen runs defense training behind the building. He never shouts, he never commands, he teaches. The girls trust him. Slowly. Not because he's an alpha, but because he doesn't act like one. You flinch, I stop, he told them on day 1. This isn't about obedience. This is about control. Yours. They listen. Because he means it. Jace set up motion sensors, firewalls, encrypted message threads, and a surveillance feed we jokingly call the gossip cam. He refuses to admit it, but he loves his role as chief security gremlin. Keep your sanctuary, he said. I'll keep it invisible. He still makes snarky comments every time Callen and I are in the same room. I ignore most of them. Mrs. Bell naturally appointed herself director of logistics, which mostly means she organizes donations, rotates bedding, and glares at anyone who forgets to hydrate. She calls everyone sweetheart except Callen, whom she calls that looming tank of testosterone. Ren's smile came back last week. It was small, crooked, barely there, but real. She's taken over animal feeding duty in the mornings and insists on giving every new rescue a celestial name. We now have a cat named Nebula, a 3-legged dog named Jupiter, and a parrot named Steve. Because Ren says Steve just feels like a Steve. I let her win that one. We don't talk much about what this place is, or what we're becoming, but everyone knows. We're not a pack. We're not ranked. We're a net, one that catches instead of traps. Sometimes at night, I sit on the clinic rooftop, wrapped in a borrowed hoodie, staring out over the city lights. Callen joins me, 2 mugs of tea in hand, no words needed. We don't kiss, we don't label it. But he's there, and so am I, and for now that's enough. He still thinks I'm human. I still let him pretend. It's early, the kind of early where the sky blushes just enough to hint at daybreak, and the world hasn't quite remembered how to be loud yet. I'm on the rooftop, knees tucked to my chest, steam rising from the chipped mug in my hands. The air smells like dew, lavender from the garden box, and the faint, comforting scent of dog fur drifting up from below. Footsteps. I don't turn. I know it's him. Callen sits beside me, holding out another mug without a word. His hand brushes mine, warm against the cool of morning. Chamomile, he says. I take it. We sit in silence, side by side, our shoulders barely touching. The quiet is comfortable now, shared, like breath. After a while, he shifts, turning slightly toward me. His fingers graze the inside of my wrist, just where my pulse flutters beneath the skin. Not possessive, not claiming. Just a reminder, I'm here. I look at him. He doesn't ask. He never does. I lean in and he meets me halfway. The kiss is soft, steady, like everything else he's given me, patient and unspoken and real. When we part, his hand lingers on mine. We don't say anything. We don't need to. Because this isn't about declarations or mating marks or names on some dusty registry. And I choose this. I choose the silence that's no longer suffocating. I choose the girls laughing downstairs. I choose the clinic that smells like tea and healing. I choose the man who doesn't need me to be anything but exactly who I am. I press my lips to the rim of the mug and close my eyes. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not surviving anymore. I'm living. I'm free.